Hey, this is Smithy and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
TSM can't rely on Bjergsen to carry them to Worlds, only to get body back there and have me laugh on social media every year. Team Liquid did Jensen dirty, so now they can't rely on having someone who'll carry them at international tournament. Now, the League of Legends World Championship is arguably the biggest, maybe even the most prestigious competition in all of esports. In fact, you could say in esports history. It has that kind of scale, prestige, production value, money pumped into it, like obviously the fame and acclaim that you acquire by winning this competition is far and away the focal point of League of Legends. And in esports itself, it is one of those few tournaments that really stand out as beacons, as paragons of the industry, like the International in Dota 2, the CSGO majors. When they happen, they're certainly up there within a similar stratosphere. But I would say in certain outside of the game aspects, actually, League is perhaps even ahead. And certainly, I think it could be the undisputed number one in terms of as an overall tournament and what it could represent if it was done differently. Yes, obviously as a game, especially fans of those games, CSGO and Dota, are going to say like, it's League of Legends, like Babby's first mobile. It's like, listen, I say that as well. But I'm talking about like the tournament, what it represents, how it's set up here. We're not talking about the quality of the games or which game you prefer. So you think about it, this tournament gathers teams from all around the world. Remember, Dota 2, they don't really have Koreans in that game. NA is much more limited than it is in other games. In CSGO, we don't really have Asia generally in contrasted with the big MOBAs, etc. We obviously have limited access outside of Europe and North America at the moment in terms of how people can travel, blah, 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 the rest of it. So League has a lot of advantages, a lot of groundwork it's already established that mean its ultimate tournament could actually be the biggest in the world. It has the massive stadiums, it has the high production value, it has a lot of money pumped into it, it's got all the teams. The problem is, from top to bottom, it's the most overrated massive tournament in all of esports. By fans, by analysts, by the industry. Now, when I say that, I'm talking about relative to the kind of contenders I put it in the category with CSGO Major, the International. I'm not talking about like CDL or the Overwatch League or some Rocket League nonsense bobbins. I'm talking about what I consider the big, major, premier esports, the ones that have a massive world championship, and then looking at what it could be. Not what it is, what it could be as well. So my problem here is, like right now with how they run it, it isn't as good as TI or the CSGO Major, and it can't be. Just starting with the format alone, it is so hamstrung from beginning to end, full spectrum, that it hasn't got a chance for, like the games could be the best games you ever saw in League of Legends, and the format would mean the TI and CSGO Major, or their TI in this case, would actually generate more great games and have more of an epic feeling about it because TI has double elimination and way more play within the format. Like, you have 18 teams in the group stage there. 2 9-team groups was the most recent format. You get a minimum of 8 best-of-2 series before you're eliminated, and the majority of the teams aren't eliminated in the group stage and go on to the playoffs and have these epic lower bracket runs, etc. And you get teams meeting themselves multiple times. You get to see how the meta switches up. You can't have that in League of Legends. You can't get multiple best-of-5 series, in this case best-of-3 in TI, between the same teams at the same tournament. CSGO doesn't limit qualification in the same kind of strict manner that they do, and certainly has no regional rules in the tournament itself once you get to the main event of the major. League of Legends has groups that use poor seeding, arguably the worst of any of these games because they don't have a healthy circuit where people internationally meet over and over again. So you have a hard time seeding properly. Seeding is even more important because your format is so whack, you play so many fewer games and against this weird mix of teams because of the whole regional thing where you have to be kept apart in League of Legends. Then you have this scenario where the region restrictions themselves mean you can never have 2 teams from the same region in the same group, and then when you get to the playoffs, like teams can't be on the same side of the bracket and all that jazz. Like, you saw how rubbish that made the group draw now that you have 4 teams from China and 4 teams from Korea. It made it so there was almost no hype in the group draw, but the group draw still has a massive amount of lock contained in it. So there's another thing, like I alluded to about CSGO's qualification. In League of Legends, maximum 4 teams can come from one region. Well, the problem with that is, and we all know this, in the history of League of Legends, there have been times when LCK would have had 6 or 7 of the top 10 teams in the world. There are times, I would argue now, where the LPL the last few years would have 5 to 7, 5 to 8 of the top 10 teams in the world potentially. Like, they really have this amount of talent where you can only have maximum 4. So that means the 5th best LCK or LPL team, at times in history, and I'd argue now, is way bigger favourite to win Worlds than maybe the best Western team that goes. Like, if this time around top esports Esports had been able to go, would they have had a better chance of winning Worlds than Mad Lions? Yeah, I think that's a pretty reasonable statement to make. I don't think that's mega unreasonable. I think they probably would, actually. I think they'd have much better chances of winning the tournament. So in this scenario, though, if you're top Esports, you're shit out of luck. You just watch at home like the rest of us. You get treated as though you're not good enough to be at Worlds because you're just the 5th best LPL team. Meanwhile, some fucker from Japan's there. They're playing in the tournament because they're just from Japan. That's it. They get to play the World Championship. You don't. In things like TI and CSGO, like, yes, there are teams that might be good that get excluded from the best region, but we're talking way deeper than that. Like, you get to play if you're the top 5 or 6 teams from Europe or whichever region it might be that's usually the best. In that particular case, China in the past, right? You can still be in the tournament. You can still have a chance to win. You don't get that in League. So to me, and by the way, it basically has happened. If you go look when Gambit won the CSGO major in 2017, they weren't even close to like a top 5 team in the world, but they won the fucking major because they were able to qualify. You can't do that in League of Legends. Then let's point out it's the only true international tournament in the format that they have in League in the circuit. Yes, you have MSI, but only the champions go there, so it's a limited field. Then the scrim setup's very weird. Obviously, you get way less best of 5 series. The format has its own issues in that regard as well. I think that's an even more extreme version of how whack the international tournaments are for Riot. CSGO and Dota 2 have way more inter-regional play. You have repeated matchups throughout the year, so you get proper rivalries emerge, storylines about people coming up. They beat them the first couple of times, then they won a key one, then that set them back because the other team adapted. You have all these contrasts of like, oh, I have a sense of how good these teams are, or I've seen them build up over in these tournaments. When they finally qualify, let's see how they'll do. You don't get that in League. You're good enough to be in the top of your region. If so, you can go to Worlds. If not, fuck you. Who gives a fuck about your storyline? So as a result, when Na'Vi and Alliance met in the TI3 final, they'd already played 1 billion times. It was a mega rivalry. That's why people knew it was going to be an epic match. When Team Liquid and Astralis met at the second to last CSGO major in Stade de Berlin, they'd had a back and forth rivalry and they'd swapped places as number 1 and number 2 teams in the world over the year. So you had it build into the tournament that you then saw them face off in an epic game. It wasn't just the one matchup only. In League of Legends, you only get that one matchup usually between the 2 big teams in a whole year if you're not from the same region. So this year, you got an RNG versus Dam1 game and you got an EDG versus Dam1 series. Aside from that, bear in mind, Dam1 was most people's, if not best team in the world, second best team in the world. Where were the other examples of a potential number 1 in the world playing off against Dam1? That's it. You got those 2 series, basically. Enjoy it. That was 2021 for you if you were a massive fan of Dam1 and thought that they had to be beaten to show that our team was better. You didn't get them play against FPX in a best of 5. You didn't get a rematch with them in RNG. You don't get any matchup where when T1 looked good at Worlds, you never got to see them in a best of 5 against RNG or EDG or these teams you'd want to see them match. Yeah, you never got to see it. Never got to see it. So those narratives don't even exist. And then they get fucked up due to the lack of sample size for narratives, and people go with these weird narratives where suddenly, because EDG won Game 5, they're geniuses, everything was great for them. Dam1 are ultimate failures, everything's gone. Like, that one game alone is just going to totally rewrite the whole year for both of those teams in a ridiculous fashion. So, to me, it just means that everyone, understandably, because it's the only game in town, just puts all their eggs in the world's basket, and it becomes the only tournament that matters. When people who don't follow Dota 2 mock TI and go, they only care about one tournament, that's because of the prize money, you idiot. Like, aside from that, when the rest of the year's going on, they absolutely care about other teams. Like, Secret last year didn't even have a TI, and they still won the all-time great teams in Dota history. They had loads of tournaments to prove that. It's actually kind of like some old narrative that people repeat then. It's not as important, but they've got way more important international tournaments than League does. League only has Worlds realistically. I try to build up MSI. Other people don't give a fuck about that tournament, like Dom, etc. So to me, you look, the fact it's the only tournament that matters is proven out by if you look at how people judge careers. So, for example, Ruler has never won his domestic championship, but it doesn't matter. Everyone's just giving him the title. Yeah, he's the greatest or one of the greatest AD carries of all time. It's totally fine. He won Worlds, so who cares? He was in 2 Worlds finals. Doesn't matter. He never won what arguably was the hardest league in the world during his prime, which was the LCK. Uzi didn't win an LPL title until Season 8, but because he was in those Worlds finals, he was always an excellent player internationally and had been in an MSI. No, he wasn't in the final of that one, but I guess he wasn't in the MSI final at that time. Like, people just again were just looking past it, like, oh well, that's fine, yep, no problem. Uzi's one of the best, and like, it was all a world's retconned everyone's career in League of Legends, it seems like, and that actually I think that sucks. It makes the esport less compelling. So, in my opinion, of the major esports, Worlds is easily the most overrated accomplishment in esports. You win a few best of ones with a massive amount of luck in the draw and all these weird political and sort of like almost bordering on like bigoted like ways of structuring a fucking tournament. And then you win 3 best of 5s once in a year, and that makes you the best in the world. You'll be remembered as the best team of that year. And that doesn't matter, by the way, that the best team in the world usually didn't win Worlds. Most of the time they didn't, or it was debatable whether they were. Now, speaking of debating things that are the best, I'm the best, but only debatably. But maybe you'd like to enjoy a beverage in a cup that says Thorin's Thoughts, then has me like saying something to look mad, like I'm flaming people like I do with TSM. Maybe you do. If so, gamersups.gg, Thorin, Thorin is the code, 10% off your order. You can also get the drink as well, of course, not just a cup to hold it in, right? Now, the problem I have is, for narratives, they could do so much at Worlds and they do almost fuck all, guys. They could have so much shoulder content, strategical breakdowns, teamfight breakdowns, like narrative stuff about people's whole careers, what they did that year, the story of the team that year. They could use the time between playoff matches, they have this massive playoff format in terms of how many weeks, to make it so that each matchup gets proper attention, like a real sports fixture, like a boxing match or a massive playoff game in the NFL that has a full lead-in and build up, and over the week you get all this little piece of shoulder content and interviews. The saddest thing about Worlds for me is this: it could be the best and it could be undisputed because of the advantages League has. Like no other game has the scope League of Legends does. The whole world plays League of Legends out of the major esports, and it doesn't play the major esports elsewhere. It has the infrastructure in League of Legends that no other big game does, in terms of how many domestic leagues there are that are fully developed and build into each other, how many massive esports orgs are involved, the investment from those orgs and people within the game dev, etc. It has the time and the production value no other game has. The production values at a very high level, they just don't use it on much. Time, like I said, they have like days and days between playoff series. And the CSGO Major, you play it every day, the fucking Major pretty much. In the teams like tournaments like TI, you can play 2 matches in a day. That's possible. So they don't make use of the time they have to enhance what they do have. And they don't make use of these elements, these things that would put them ahead and make them the best, due to the philosophy of like what the tournament represents. Well, it has to be one Korean team and one Chinese team only in each group. And all political stuff. What do we say about China and Taiwan? Are they? Oh, I don't know. Bloody hell. And the format. Oh, best of one makes it more exciting. And if an upset and an under, yeah, fuck you. Politics stuff. Like people just don't get it. There are so many things, and most of them were just decided by Riot. They weren't problems. They created problems, then created another problem to solve their problem, which then means you have a different problem. Now you could just go back, rewrite it, and just like these other tournaments, you could change all these factors and make this the best tournament in the world. Instead, it is the most overrated tournament and accomplishment in esports. This video was kindly supported by Iskander, Lager15, Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Travis Goff, Zack Schmidt, ochs, Animosity, Butt Pounder 420, Chronic Alcoholism, Hades, Jdubs, Jensen Goh, Joseph Ginsburg, Kovacevicd, Tobias Bernasconi, Zoomba, Zyrathenia, and of course, a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion and DZL. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? You want to ask me a question? Maybe you want to know who the guests are for my upcoming content, or you'd like to take part in one of those long donated discussions. Well, put your money where your mouth is at the Patreon link in the description box below and join the Scrilluminati today.